wide the doors of time and strife. Swing wide the doors to let in the light. Bring in the dawn for humankind. Swing wide the doors of his heart and mind. Your turn. Swing wide the doors of time and strife. Swing wide the doors to let in the light. Bring in the dawn for humankind. Swing wide the doors of his heart and mind. I'm not holding it in anymore. I want to shout it out loud. I understand now what I'm here for, and what this life is all about. It's about love, it's about laughter, it's about comfort and smile. It's about love, it's about kindness, it's about hearts open wide. It's about love, it's about passion, it's about taking a chance. It's about love, it's about service, it's about lending a hand, about lending a hand. Swing wide the doors of time and strife. Swing wide the doors to let in the light. Bring in the dawn for humankind. Swing wide the doors of his heart and mind. There's a voice that I've heard for years. I learned to keep it inside, and now it's coming in loud and clear. I want a deeper life. It's about love, it's about laughter, it's about comfort and smile. It's about love, it's about kindness, it's about hearts open wide. It's about love, it's about passion, it's about taking a chance. It's about love, it's about service, it's about lending a hand, about lending a hand. Swing wide the doors of time and strife. Swing wide the doors to let in the light. Bring in the dawn for humankind. Swing wide the doors of his heart and mind. Swing wide the doors of time and strife. Swing wide the doors to let in the light. Bring in the dawn for humankind. Swing wide the doors of his heart and mind. Swing wide the doors of his heart and mind. Swing wide the doors of his heart and mind.
Thank you, Sounds of Light, for getting us going with such a joyous song this morning. I love that song. Good morning. My name is Vicki Krasinski, and welcome to Unity. We recognize each one of you as a wise and loving, powerful spiritual being. Thank you for sharing your radiant presence with us this morning. If you would, please turn off your cell phones and any other electronic devices so they won't interfere with our service. We're delighted to have Greg Yarmesch back with us this morning as our guest speaker. Greg has been a student of Unity for 15 years and shares the Unity principles by facilitating classes, giving Sunday talks, and weekly inspirational emails. And on that point of classes, more to come, but we are listening to the feedback we get, and Greg will be giving a class shortly, probably the next time he's our guest speaker. As president of a building materials distribution company, he brings the Unity message into the business world where it is so desperately needed, with coaching, mentoring, leadership retreats, and personal demonstration. Greg teaches his employees how to live their best lives, both personally and professionally. Thank you, Greg, for sharing your inspiration with us. And now, Linda Sletton will lead us in our opening prayer.
Please join me in prayer. We are grateful for this beautiful spiritual community and for each person who is here today who are watching online. We affirm that each one of you will receive what you need, that our speaker is blessed, and that our drumming circle is blessed. We also affirm that we are attracting our right and perfect minister at the right and perfect time. And so it is. Amen.
Please join me as we declare together our opening affirmation. Together, there is only one presence and one power in my life and in the universe, God the good, omnipotence. If this is your first time at Unity North Tampa, we extend a warm welcome to you. Please raise your hand if you're a first-time visitor. Our ushers will bring you a flower and a welcome packet. We know you had many choices of where to be this Sunday morning, and we're honored that you chose to be with us. We believe you were divinely guided to be here today, and we affirm that you're being blessed by being with us. In your welcome packet, you'll find a request card that you can use to let us know how we can support you. And if you bring the completed card to the bookstore, you get 10% off any book in the bookstore. Our bookstore is on the other side of the fellowship area. Marion, our Sounds of Light music director, is going to share his Unity story with us today. And while he makes his way up here, we'd like to take a moment to recognize that tomorrow marks the 31st anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The American with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in several areas, including employment, transportation, public accommodations, communications, and access to state and local government programs and services.
Legislation which takes a sledgehammer to another wall, one which has for too many generations separated Americans with disabilities from the freedom they could glimpse but not grasp. And once again we rejoice as this barrier falls, proclaiming together, we will not accept, we will not excuse, we will not tolerate discrimination in America.
Yeah. I wish I could have been there. I worked on that legislation, but I wasn't there. So my name is Marion Quizala. Marion, as everyone knows me here. And as Vicki said, I'm the music director here. I've been here since 2008. No, 2008 is when I got married. 2003. Is that when we got founded? I've been here 13 years. I mean, however long it's been, I've been here since the beginning. So my path to Unity, like many, wasn't a very direct path. I grew up, like many I've heard so far, Catholic. I went to St. John the Evangelist Catholic School, St. John the Evangelist Catholic Church. In first grade, Sister Jane Anthony was teaching us from the Baltimore Catechism. Remember the Baltimore Catechism? How many Catholics, ex-Catholics, Reformed Catholics, recovering Catholics? The Baltimore Catechism was a little blue book, and it had all the answers to everything you want to know about religion, about the Catholic faith. And the first thing it said was, God is everywhere. We believe that. God is everywhere. Then the next thing it said is, hell is the absence of God. Wait a second. I was only in first grade. That didn't make sense to me, and I asked Sister Jane Anthony why that was so. How could it be true? Well, I began a quest, and it went on for a long time, but it really started about that time. I remember when I was 8 years old, I celebrated Catholic Mass in my den, in my parents' den. I had the chasuble, I had a stole, I had a manna pole, I had a cincture around my waist. And I celebrated Mass in Latin, And I knew what I was saying. And I understood what I was doing. I wasn't like most of the Catholics in the pews who kind of said, stand up, kneel down. You say the words. What does it all mean? They leave and they don't really know. But I understood it at a different level. So when I was in 9th grade, I decided I was going to go to the seminary. And I spent 6 years in the seminary. I was taught by the Vincentians. The Vincentians were very progressive teachers. And I learned a lot, but they asked me to leave. because while I was learning, I was questioning. And one of my greatest experiences on my spiritual path occurred when I was 15 years old. I had a great opportunity to study in France for a summer. And while I was there, I was in the seminary. I turned 16, by the way, in France. I was there all by myself with a French family, but I didn't have anybody going with me. But we toured around to many of the cathedrals. I went to Chartres, I went to Sacré-Cœur. But when I walked into Notre Dame, I was there before. And I knew it. So I didn't understand it. And as you can tell, it was a pretty emotional experience because it wasn't like I could go to my Catholic friends and say, I think I was a priest in another lifetime. But when I found unity, I found a place, there's a book in unity called Case for Reincarnation. I was a Catholic priest in England. My name was Gideon, and I was kind of a rabble-rouser myself. And the way they used to do away with Catholic priests who were rabble-rousers is they would bury them alive. And the only fear I have is being buried alive. So anyway, I ended up at Unity, and I found a place that believed the way I did, that religion is not essential. Spirituality is what counts. I found a place that, like I believed, one of my favorite books I ever read was called The Power of Positive Thinking. And there's a line in there that says, the sort of image you hold of yourself is very important. That image will become fact. The thought is the ancestor to the deed. If you imagine yourself with deeds of success, with thoughts of success, the deeds of success will follow. So it sounds like what you hold in mind manifests after its own kind. And so unity was really where I was ending up. I wasn't searching, I was walking a path. I was walking along that path, and here's where it ended up. And unity means so much to me because it expresses my spirituality. I believe the divine is within me. Oh, another great movie, Out on a Limb. Remember Shirley MacLaine yelling at the sea, I am God! I am divine. You are divine. And as far as I know, unity is one of the few places that teach that fact. So, and it's a special day for me too because of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act tomorrow. Because as I went blind, I heard all these negative things about blindness. You know, my uncle was blind. He used to say, "Oh, he's so amazing. He cuts his lawn, he trims his trees, he owns his own business. You know, he's very independent." I never thought I could do that because he was amazing. He was like, you know, superhuman, and I wasn't. I was average. So when I started losing my eyesight, I didn't believe the things that they were saying. I knew there was something better for me, and I searched, and I found someone who told me the real problem with blindness is not the loss of eyesight, but misunderstanding and the lack of information that exists. If a blind person is given proper training and opportunity, blindness is a physical nuisance. And that doesn't matter what disability you have, whether it's blindness, whether it's PTSD, whether you use a wheelchair for mobility. The image you hold of yourself is what's important. And it's not the characteristic of the disability, but it's the person behind that disability just as I'm tall and used to have red hair. That's a characteristic of mine. My blindness is a characteristic of mine too, and it's nothing more. Is it inconvenient? Heck yeah. It really is sometimes, but life is. But unity has been an end path for me. I'm still on the path, I'm still searching, and I'm proud to be a part of this community, and encourage all of you to continue the work of study and learning and realizing that God is everywhere, including inside of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion, for that inspirational story. We now ask that the prayer box be brought forward. The requests in the prayer box are prayed for here during the month, and then they're sent to Unity Village, where they receive prayer for another 30 days. The Daily Word is a daily Unity devotional that inspires us to express our spiritual nature. The Daily Word has been published in many languages, and I don't even know how many years, but I did hear once that the largest religious group that subscribes to the Daily Word are Catholics. We ask that you settle within and listen deeply as we share today's message. Deborah Joy will read the Daily Word in English, and Chiki will read the Spanish.
My life's journey begins and ends in the heart of God. I feel excitement at the beginning of a journey, thinking about the adventures, the beautiful sights, and the fascinating people I will find at my journey's end. Even as I look forward to reaching my destination, however, I remain alert, open to the adventures and insights that await discovery along the way. My faith tells me that my spiritual journey began in the heart of God, long before my human birth. In childhood, I looked outward, longing for the adventures that would become waypoints on my journey to maturity. Now I journey inward, longing for the spiritual home I never really left. I am learning that even the most ordinary day can become an opportunity to realize that the heart of God is present everywhere. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time and forevermore. At Psalm 121, verse 8.
Buenos días. Bendiciones para todos. La palabra de hoy es sendero. El sendero de mi vida comienza y termina en el corazón de Dios. Siento emoción al comenzar un viaje. Cuando pienso que los acontecimientos, los paisajes y la gente fascinante que encontraré. Aún así, me siento anheloso por llegar a mi destino, por mantener alerta, abierto al gozo y al aprendizaje que esperan ser descubiertos a lo largo del camino. Mi fe me dice que mi sendero espiritual comenzó en el corazón de Dios, mucho antes de mi nacimiento. Al crecer, tal vez solo busqué fuera de mí, anhelando que mis acciones humanas se convirtieran en logros. Hoy acudo a mi interior, al hogar espiritual que realmente nunca abandoné. Estoy aprendiendo que aún el día más rutinario puede convertirse en una oportunidad para descubrir que el corazón de Dios late por doquier. Y del Salmo 1:21, versículo 8, afirmo: el Señor te protege en todos sus caminos, ahora y siempre. Y así sea. Gracias.
Let's prepare for meditation by listening to I Am Loved.
You are seen, you are heard, you are loved for who you are. You are enough, you are complete. You are seen, you are heard, you are loved for who you are. You are enough, you are complete.
Time of meditation, and we begin by finding a comfortable position in the chair, relaxing your shoulders, relaxing your entire body, starting from the top of your head and moving down to your toes. And the most difficult part, relaxing your mind. And allow these positive affirmations to flow through you. I am now in the sacred place. That place where the divine and I are one. I close the door to all distractions, to all external issues. I surrender myself to the divine presence in the assurance that all is well. The outpouring of healing and comforting love brings peace and calm to my soul. Infinite wisdom reveals to me a new understanding of my life and my circumstances. Guided and inspired, I find the strength to live each day with faith, joy, and enthusiasm. Divine Presence, this moment is our moment. In it, I experience the gift of presence, and I find the peace I am looking for. I open wide the doors of my being to receive the wonderful blessings and goodness that are prepared for me. I sink into the still waters, the state of perfect peace, where nothing can disrupt the flow of life, love, and creativity. In this state of awareness, I rest, I renew, I blossom, I thrive. I affirm nothing can disrupt the calm of my soul in the silence. Bringing your attention back to the room, we speak silently or out loud the names of those that we would like to hold in prayer. We also hold in prayer all the requests in the prayer box. Please join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we have also forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from error. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
So many people would look at us and they hear what we have to say about faith and spirituality, and they would say that we were lost. But we're not lost. No. Ready? Walk down this path I walk, somewhere way up high. I can see the wicked road that I have come. I walked a mile with sorrow, I walked a mile with joy. Now I'm less afraid of either one. For every tear I've cried, there's a song that I have learned. For every mile I've walked, there's a lesson I've learned. I'm not lost, I am exploring. Life is an adventure worth enjoying. Though I may not know where Don't choose to live their lives on quiet avenues, while others find a place to walk away. Some like me are seekers, we take less traveled roads, believing they can find a better way. And though I get discouraged, I won't be turning back. I have joy as my compass and faith as my guide. I'm not lost, I am exploring. Life is an adventure worth enjoying. Though I may not know where I'm going, I am not lost, I am exploring. I am not lost, I am exploring. All of us are headed for the same destination, so why not blaze a trail that's got imagination? I'm not lost, I am exploring. Life is an adventure worth enjoying, though I may not know where I'm going. I am not lost, I am exploring. I am not lost, I am exploring. I am not lost, I am exploring.
Good morning. Now, Marion, your share was phenomenal. You know, your spiritual vision and your soul is such a pleasure to behold. So thank you, and I almost feel like I should yield my 20 minutes to you.
I was kind of choked up watching George sign that bill, because that's like my life now. So.
It's such a privilege. Thank you very much. And you know, Marion said so many things already today that it's so congruent with my message today. It reminded me of when I started coming to Unity many years ago. I had a lot of enthusiasm about it, and I was sharing it with my friends. And you know, it's just kind of like, you know, for those of you who are parents, when you have a newborn, you're excited and you want to share that information with everybody. And I had a really close friend of mine said, you know, Greg, I can see your enthusiasm, but I really have something important I need to share with you about Unity. I was like, okay, great, you know. So he pulls me aside and he says, I want you to know that that's a cult. He's like, you know, they preach health, wealth, and happiness. Do you really believe that crap? And I'm like, well, actually, I don't yet, but I want to, you know? So, you know what, 15 years later, I'm grateful to say that some of these messages have percolated into my soul, and I'm grateful to be able to be here today to share some of that with you. You know, it's a privilege to be here. Last time I spoke, we talked about the levels of consciousness, and we got a lot of positive feedback about that talk. And I appreciate we always appreciate the feedback, because it helps us make better decisions, and it assists us in making a better delivery. And it's clear that the group wanted to have a class on how to transcend the different levels of consciousness. So I'm going to do that in either September or October. So keep an eye out for you know, the bulletins, and we'll let you know when that class is going to happen. But as Vicki said, it'll be like something that will happen after the next time I speak. So we'll look forward to that. There is one message or one little feedback that was given to me. It was anonymous, okay? And they gave you really positive reviews on the message and the delivery. But they wrote something that I just loved, and I got to say, whoever this was, I really don't know. I don't want to know who you are, but you know me really, really well, because you said we need this clown. And you know, once upon a time, I would have taken great offense to that, you know. But with these wonderful teachings and the ego deflation that occurs through this process, I've been able to learn how to not take myself so darn seriously, you know, and I am a clown. I've been a clown most of my life, in fact, you know, and I'm grateful that I can look back at my clownness and embrace it and just laugh at it. And you know, the other great thing about being a clown is when you bump up against another clown who doesn't realize that, that they're not a clown in reality, you can relate to them, so there's a lot of relatability and there's a humility and a compassion that comes through, and I just gotta say, I'm just so grateful for these Unity teachings because it's really transformed my life, and I'm just so grateful to be up here. And Vicki shared with you that I do bring the Unity message into the workplace, and that is not an easy task, I will say. One of the great gifts about speaking here at Unity is that you all want to be here. There's an openness, there's a willingness. And I've learned that whenever we want to transform in life, it requires a willingness to change. And it seems that the messages that we share within the Unity circles are palatable in that we are open and willing to accept them as a possibility. Whereas I run into a challenge very often in the business world of, people just don't want to accept, a higher truth. When Jesus was teaching his message, he was a minority of one. People were against his message because it was new and it was different. It was liberating. It was something powerful, and he was a minority of one. So people were averse to that message, and in my very small way, I'm understanding that too in the business world. So it really is an honor and a privilege to come in here and teach, because our third Unity principle says that we are co-creators with God, creating reality through thoughts held in mind. Marianne shared a little bit about that today. Think about that. We're co-creators with God. That means God is the pilot and I'm the co-pilot. That means that I have to take responsibility for my life circumstances. And at first, that was a really, really hard pill to swallow, because I was so deeply planted in playing the clown role or the victim role my whole life. It was really easy to be able to just dust off responsibility to other people and blame everybody else for my woe-begone, pitiful state. But this message here was like, wait a minute, I have to take responsibility now. I don't like the idea of that, So it's also been liberating. What's amazing to me is being able to actually experience this, to be able to work through all the different teaching programs we have here at Unity, to be able to experiment with the idea and see it in action, so then we can actually demonstrate it and see it working in our lives. And it's such a wonderful gift to have that truth. It's a wonderful responsibility, because if I was able to absolutely destroy and ruin my life before, then that means I have the power to create something really powerful and wonderful and joyful. And I'm so grateful that this is the path that we're all on. I mean, what greater thing is there in life? To me, there's nothing more valuable than spirituality and the pursuit of higher consciousness. There's no amount of money, there's no amount of worldly good, there's no amount of anything that the man-made world provides that remotely touches with the joys of understanding the God within myself and you, and knowing that we're divinely loved and inspired. It's such an amazing gift. We are not, the byproducts of the whim of a capricious God, which is my upbringing was a lot like Marian's. If I was a good boy, then good things would happen. God would do good for me, and Santa Claus would come and bring presents. If I was a bad boy, then I would be punished. And I believed the punishment part of that my entire life. It wasn't up until recent years where I actually realized that I was keeping myself in a prison. And so today, my talk is about the Great Wall. And I'm not talking about the one in China, I'm talking about the one inside of us. The Great Wall is this protection, this barrier that we put up, to protect ourselves from being hurt. But the challenge in doing that is that we also prevent the light from shining in and love from coming in. It really makes for a very difficult, challenging life. So I'll give you an example of our third Unity principle. The first time I actually kind of saw it in action. Now, I'll elaborate a little bit more on this, but I once had a puppy, and she was a German Shepherd. And I lived in an apartment complex. And the first couple days I had her, I went to work and left her, she was able to run around the apartment. Well, she tore up the carpet and made a big mess. And so I got smart and I bought a doggy gate, and I put that doggy gate up so she could just stay in the tiled kitchen area while I was at work, So, she's a little puppy and the gate's up here, Well, after her living in that environment for a long time, she started to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, but in her mind, that gate was still much bigger than her. She grew to the point where that gate came up to here on her, and she could have jumped over that gate in a split second, but she didn't believe she could. And I argue that we all experience that too. There's a belief that we have about ourselves that is not true, but we act as if it is. We think as if it is, and we do things that are congruently with that limitation. So what we do is we kind of build these, belief system by belief system, we build this metaphorical wall, if you will, block by block. Each of these blocks is a lie about ourselves. Each of these blocks is something that is, misinformation that we accept as truth. But that misinformation blocks us off from the sunlight of the Spirit. Can any of you relate to what I'm saying? Yeah, lots of people, right? Can I have the next slide, please? I'm going to talk about the one area of my life that I've learned was the biggest builder of walls, if you will. And this was something that was so subtle at first that I kind of dismissed the concept. But as I started to work with the concept, I realized that this was the single greatest wall building thing in my life. And it was the single biggest problem, issue, the thing that I had in my life that was creating disharmony for me. It was absolutely creating misery for me. And what it was is creating expectations. So I'm going to take you through this example here of expectations. In the business world, we do this thing called process improvement. And in order to improve a process to make it more effective or to make it more profitable, you have to map the process out. And once you map the process out, you see what white space is. And white space is areas that are just wasteful. They're areas that just don't make sense. And we focus on the white space and we change or we eliminate the white space to make the process more efficient. So for me, in order to understand what was creating these resentments and expectations that I had, I needed to understand the process better. So I have, and you may follow along with me because you may experience this as well too. I have expectations that are completely unconscious. It's kind of like it comes from that 5-year-old spoiled brat inside of me, the one that thinks he owns the road, the one that thinks things ought to be his way, the one that demands to have my way now. That 5-year-old, a lot of you are nodding your heads, so you either see it in me or you see it yourself, I don't know, but I'll accept that I am that, I have been that. I'll give you an example, an expectation. We live in Florida, it's pretty hot here, I've got a little extra insulation, I don't like hot. I like it cold. My preference would be, 68 degrees in here. That would be my preference, Now, many of you say, 68 degrees. No way, But if I'm not aware of this, I walk into this room and it's 74 degrees, so my expectation is up here. I want it to be really cold. But the reality is it's not really cold. And I immediately get disappointed. You follow me? Where you're going to run up to the grocery store to pick up a gallon of milk and you're in a hurry. Sure enough, someone drives really slow in front of you through your neighborhood and, they miss the light and then you're stuck and you're like, And so these expectations lead to disappointment. And when we become disappointed, we automatically feel hurt. Automatically. Disappointment, we feel hurt. When we feel hurt, we immediately look for something to blame. If I blame you, then I become angry. When somebody's driving really slow in front of me, when I'm in a hurry, I blame, right? That person is bad or wrong or whatever, and I am the victim of that circumstance, right? I don't take a pause for one moment and say, well, number one, I don't own the road. Number two, maybe they got something else going on. They're not in a hurry. They're on a Sunday stroll. They're not looking out for me. There's all these rational things that I could say, but I don't spend 1 second considering any of that stuff. I think about, I want my way now. I'm a 5-year-old and I deserve to have my way with no effort on my end. That's me. If I blame myself, then I automatically feel guilty. I think a lot of us, if we grew up in certain religious teachings, that guilt is a foundation of a lot of our feelings around our emotions around a lot of that. So I lived in a lot of guilt. I was always looking at what I did wrong. I really just, whatever happened to me, most of the time, if I wasn't blaming them, I was blaming myself. And I'm like, well, yeah, I realize that they're not a trustworthy person. And even though, I could see that they were not trustworthy, they really, rake me over the coals. And I feel guilty about that now. And so, there's this guilt factor that plays a big burden. The other area is that if we don't know what to blame, we go into a state of fear. What do we blame for COVID? Well, you see people want to blame Wuhan, people want to blame the government, people want to blame all kinds of things, But we really don't know what to blame, so now all of a sudden there's fear. And we live in this perpetual state of fear because we don't know what to do and where to go. So that's an example of that. And the challenge is that when we live into this area, we're constantly vacillating between anger, guilt, and fear. Anger, guilt, and fear. Anger, guilt, and fear. When we do that for a while, we start to feel insecure. Because we lose control, we lose charge, we perceive that we have control. But, I don't know how much that's really true. If we're conscious, we can take charge of what we are, co-creating. But if we're completely asleep, then we really don't have charge of what's going on. This leads to a great deal of insecurity, and these 4 emotions create stress. How many of us can relate to stress? All of us. Stress is not something that happens to you. Stress is something that we are doing as a reaction, an unconscious reaction to the world events, to stimulus. Unity principle number 3, we co-create. So you may say, I don't want to take responsibility for my emotions. Okay, keep that vicious cycle going, feel insecure, feel fearful, Or you can say, wait a minute, how can I take charge of this? How can I move past this? What can I do? Have the next slide, please, Linda. One of the marvels, so Rumi, many of you know Rumi, a Sufi poet, wonderful, wonderful stuff. And he says, one of the marvels of the world is a sight of a soul sitting in a prison with the key in its hand. Boy, that was me. All of this anger and resentment and fear were all these blocks that I was putting on this wall, and I was getting higher and higher and higher. And the joy that we have as a child turns into misery as an adult. That was my experience. And it's because these walls were so high that the light wasn't shining through anymore. I forgot who I was. And I was this man here in the prison. But I couldn't see it. I felt terrible, I felt miserable, and I wanted to blame the whole world for my miserable woe-begone state. Everybody can relate to that, or maybe a little bit? Yeah. We've got to realize that we cannot plant tomato seeds and expect roses to grow. If we're living in a constant state of negative emotion, that's what we're going to co-create. That's the world that we are experiencing. It doesn't have to be. But if we want roses to grow, then we have to think, act, and feel congruently with roses. If we want to be free, then we have to think, act, and feel freedom. How do we do that? I'm glad you asked. I'm going to show you. Okay. Can I have the next slide, please? From Luke 17:21, neither shall they say, lo here, or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. This was not a message that I understood until not too long ago. The kingdom of God is inside of me. God is inside of me. And as we say, God is everywhere. The God that I used to believe in was up in the sky, very distant. It wasn't in me. It certainly was not in you. You know? I mean, maybe it was in me, but definitely not in you. Yeah. If God is inside of us, then I have to imagine there's something that it can do to assist us with this woe-begone state. And guess what there is? There is something amazing that can be done. God is available for us to surrender these resentments and these expectations to. As we become aware of these resentments, as this emotion comes across your vision, you know, you're driving to Publix and that slow car gets in front of you and all of a sudden you feel the emotions start to boil up and you feel the anger and you're like, man, that Greg was right, but this person's really wrong right now, you know? We have the opportunity to surrender that. Can I have the next slide, please? from 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. Now, we all know in unity, the word sin does not mean you're bad. It means missing the mark. In fact, it's from an old Aramaic word that means bisha, which is unripe fruit. Unripe fruit. A fruit that's just not ready yet. That's me. I had to learn. I didn't know any better. Somebody didn't put their arm around me when I was a little kid and said, son, let me tell you how to live a prosperous life. No one ever did that, you know. In fact, I got a lot of reinforcement of how bad I was. So the word sin meant something very different to me. But because we follow this loving God and this loving God is inside of us, then surely it wants my well-being, you know, as a top priority, and it is available to assist me in the process of waking up. So as we experience that emotion, as we experience that resentment towards somebody, as we experience that anger, you know, or the guilt, or the feelings of being less than, we can simply identify it and surrender it to God. What does that mean? We simply ask God inside of us to remove this burden from our soul. It's really that simple. Now, my experience, you know, I'm kind of thinking as I started to experiment with this process, I started to observe changes in my life. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I've identified these handful of things specifically. Surely I could just step back and say, God, you know, just take the whole darn thing. You know, that'll be a piece of cake, you know, and then I'll be enlightened, right? And it doesn't quite work like that. I'll just tell you. I tried it, so, you know, go ahead and try it just so you can, you know, mark it off of your list, but it just doesn't quite work that well. What works really well is to be able to take an inventory. Take an inventory of these character defects, these flaws, these parts of us that don't serve us well anymore. And when we identify them and surrender them, I don't know how this happens, but God renders them inoperative inside of us. It's kind of like our minds are like a hard drive on a computer, and these negative thoughts are like software. And as we become aware of them and surrender them to God, it's like God removes them off of our hard drive. Now, it's not that we're completely oblivious to them anymore. They're still there. We just don't feel compelled to gratify them anymore. When somebody pulls out in front of you in traffic, the first thing that goes through your mind is not, you know, you're getting ready to wave them a signal with your finger. That's not what happens. What happens is that you recognize that that person is doing the very best they can with what light they have. And so am I. And imagine if we could live our lives with that wisdom, to be able to say, I, Greg, you know, I, Vicky, you know, I, Linda, I am doing the very best that I can with what light I have today. And undoubtedly, the person that you are today is very different from the one you were, you know, a year ago and 10 years ago. We are growing. We are in this perpetual state of growingness, you know. I saw this bumper sticker that I just love because it seems to be true to me. It says, life is a school and love is the lesson. I like that because I found that to be true. And you know the first person we have to learn to love? That's right. You guys have to learn to love me first. And then, I mean, if you could love me, you can love anybody, you know, a clown, a wretch like me. So, you know, but it is ourselves. And you know, I spent my whole life thinking that I was less than. I was completely unable to love someone effectively and thoroughly. I wasn't able to see that they were doing the best that they could with what light they had. Because I had all these expectations. She ought to act this way. She ought to love me the right way. Or, you know, the boss ought to treat me the right way. Everybody ought to do these things. You know, the kids ought to act a certain way. And everybody's missing the mark. And if everybody would just straighten up and fly right, I'd be okay. Doesn't it sound like a spoiled 5-year-old? I want my way now. Go to the next slide. I love this quote here. And take a look at the image. The image, too, is really cool. Just take a second to let that settle in, but you can see kind of like this awareness inside of us, this awareness. Of course, this image is not factual, of course, but it's an illustration of this awareness inside of us that can disidentify from what's really going on right now. It's kind of like that Christ consciousness inside of us that knows the truth. Our job is to cleanse this awareness of all of the disharmony and all the mistakes and the burdens that we've carried with us. It's like this wall that we built is so big that our job, at least my job as I see it clearly, is to dismantle that wall one brick by one brick. I created them, I put them up there under that old belief system, and now with this new belief system, I am able to take those bricks down, or actually God takes them down through surrender. But this quote here, I love it. It says, your definition of who you are is your prison. You can set yourself free at any time. Now, if I saw this a few years ago, I'd be like, whatevs, That's that cultish unity stuff. But it's true. I had, and still can, this image of what Greg was, this who Greg was or is. I never once thought, what is Greg? Isn't that the better question? What am I? Not who am I. Who am I as my heritage? Who am I as my job? All these transitory type things that are not really valuable in the grand scheme of it all. What I am, totally different. So if I continue to identify with this story that Greg is this, failed in bankruptcy, failed in business, divorced twice, a whole slew of mistakes and mishaps. If I believe that story about myself, then I'm going to live a miserable life. Or we can do what we suggested a little earlier, is to identify those things and determine whether that's something valuable. Is that really a definition of who I want to be? And then surrender them. It's such a gift. It's such a gift to go through this process of waking up. And I could talk about this for hours, but I realize that my time is up. So I'm going to leave you with one last thing to contemplate. While Thomas Jefferson was a man of government, he said something that is so apropos to spirituality and consciousness. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Liberty means freedom. If I want to be spiritually free, if I want to awaken into the realization that God and I are one, and so are you and I, and if I want to experience the oneness and the love and everything, the joy that comes along with what our way shower showed us. Jesus taught us over and over again, and he said, these things and more you shall do. He showed us the way. But we can't act like the 5-year-old spoiled brat. We actually got to do work. And I know that's a 4-letter word. It was for me for a long time. But I promise you, if you're willing to take on this, and many of you already do, but if you're willing to take on this task, it will be the most valuable thing that you've ever done with your time. And as you start to shed layers and layers of this onion, if you will, and all this conditioning, what happens is you recognize what you are. And there is nothing more magnificent than to be a child of God. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Greg, for a very inspirational talk. Appreciate it. I do remember hearing somewhere, I think it was in Course in Miracles, it's like if you're feeling disappointed, ask yourself, who made the appointment? This is the time we gratefully and joyfully give our tithes and offerings in support of our spiritual community and in gratitude for all the ways we're blessed. We invite you to take your offering in your hand as we sing our offering affirmation song, I Am Divine Love.
I am divine love. I'm unlimited supply. All I am, all I have, all I give.
offerings in the baskets on the wall at the end of the service. Linda Sletton will now bless the offering.
Please join me as we bless the offering. We are grateful for all the gifts received here today, those received in the mail and online. We affirm that each giver will be abundantly blessed, and we dedicate these gifts to the divine purpose. And so it is. Amen.
Would our prayer chaplains who are on duty please stand? Our prayer chaplains are available to pray with you privately after the service. Everything shared with them is absolutely confidential. Our prayer chaplains who are on duty are wearing purple stoles. Next week, we're very excited to have Reverend Prentice come back and share his message with us. And would you please leave out your filled forms in the basket in the foyer or in fellowship on your way out, which I'm assuming are the feedback forms that gives Greg information. Pay close attention to your calendars. We're adding more events every month. We have a lot starting in August. We are reviving movie night once a month, and this month's movie will be The Moses Code. Next week, Jan Cohen will lead our grief recovery group, and note that it now meets from 1 to 3 the first Sunday of the month. And Victoria Hanley would like to have a moment.
Good morning. I miss seeing you all, so it's nice to see you in person. I want to let you know that Friday, August 6th, we are reconvening our youth ed team, and we are looking for volunteers. Our goal is that if we could have some volunteers who maybe could help out with our children, maybe even once a month, or even in some other way, like as a sponsor for an older child. So if you're at all interested in that, we're going to meet at 5:30 Friday, August 6th. That's the first Friday of the month. And at 6:30, we're going to bring back food, fun, and fellowship. So we'll be inviting you to come with a potluck item. We usually eat around 6:30. And then for this month, it looks like we're going to probably start out with a game night. So if you have a favorite game, you're welcome to bring it. We have a number of things here for a lot of different ages, and we certainly encourage you to come if you have youth to bring them along with you. If anybody has any questions, I will be here afterwards. Thank you so much.
Yes, Victoria. Is this open to everybody or just for those with family, littles?
Yes, Amanda, this is open to everybody. So you certainly, if you have littles or bigs or in-betweens, really any size, we are not picky. We would love to see anyone who wants to come and just enjoy. We have a nice time chatting. The 5:30 will be more focused on people who have an interest in helping out a little bit, but 6:30, absolutely, anyone is welcome to join us.
Thanks.
And if you do not bring a potluck item, we have never had a lack of food, so do not feel stressed if potluck kind of worries you. No worries. We typically have at least a vegetarian option, a non-vegetarian option, and some other alternative options, so there's always plenty of food.
Any more questions? No, that's it.
And we do have fun too, so potluck and fun, starting at 6:30. Penny, our minister search update.
Good morning. Before I start, I was have to make some kind of comment. Instead of the comment, we need this clown, I think it should have been, we need this clairvoyant, because he absolutely knew what message I needed to hear today as a reminder. So thank you, Greg. I think that's a better comment. Okay, update of progress for the search committee of our new reverend. As a recap from last Sunday, our committee members developed a lengthy list of interview questions, which we whittled down to a reasonable number at our meeting last Monday. Now, at our meeting tomorrow, we're going to take one last look at those questions just to make sure we've covered all the bases. And then we will be able to start the initial interviews of candidates. So the next step after that is for our interview team to actually do the interviews. So, and we're considering these the initial interviews. So members of the interview team are Donna Stevens, Greg Yarmesch, Jeff Means, and Mitch Vigavino. So that's our interview team, okay? And some additional encouraging news. Donna spoke with Reverend Doug Dura. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Dura. Okay, Doug Dura at Unity Worldwide Headquarters. He indicated it's just been just a little bit over a month since our opening posted on the Unity Worldwide website, so it's still early in the process. And typically the average time for hiring a new minister is 6 to 9 months. So he predicted that we will receive some more resumes. So that was really encouraging news. But last but not least, we want to say our search committee affirmation. So if you would please join with us, with me and with the search committee team. We gratefully and joyfully behold divine and inspired and skillful leadership revealed in our shared Christ consciousness. Thank you.
Please stand as we sing our peace song and be my thought. Quickly and quietly so that our prayer chaplains may have a space to pray with those who would like prayer. Now we affirm together. The light of God surrounds us. We are light. The love of God enfolds us. We are love. The power of God protects us.